Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at flyfisherinsiderpodcast. Now let's begin. Today our guest is Colby Culbertson from Yentna Outdoors, based out of Texas. Colby is the co-founder and CEO of Yentna Outdoors, which is an updated booking software system for guides, allowing for guides to receive more bookings and streamline their business more efficiently. Yentna Outdoors has many options for guides, lodges, and outfitters, their bookings throughout the year. Some of Yentna's options are even free. Colby, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no worries. We're excited to have you here as well. So I know we've been trying to make this happen for some time, but here we are. So before we jump into Yentna itself, Colby, can you tell me a bit about yourself and who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Sacramento, California. Our company is based in Texas, and my co-founder lives out there. And I actually grew up in the Sacramento area, and oddly enough, I started out my professional career in organized real estate, and spent some time at Zillow Group, which is a pretty large up and coming real estate software and marketplace company here in the United States. Ultimately, my passions have always been in the outdoors. Both my dad, my uncles, my grandfather. My dad was the oldest of six, and there was only one girl in that group. And he grew up in a little town called Lincoln, California, here in Northern California, and grew up fishing and hunting. It was just what they did, and I grew up having that passed down to me. And truthfully, the reason why we started Yentna is I wanted to get back to those passions and do something that I've been passionate about my whole life.
Cool, I like it. Colby, when you say we started Yentna, is there a partner involved?
Yes, Anthony Gallo is my business partner, and he's out of Austin, Texas.
Okay, how'd you guys meet?
Oddly enough, I had started this journey of building Yentna before we knew what it was going to be called, and we were ultimately trying to build a marketplace, and that was the original idea. And I started looking into competitors, and ultimately what I found was Anthony's had started the process of building that and the framework, and ultimately I reached out to him, and here we are. We've decided to partner together. He had the technical wherewithal. He's in charge of our dev team and really the tech side of things, and ultimately I have a knowledge of how to grow and build businesses, and so it was a good match.
Which one of you guys came up with the name Yentna?
Actually, it was one of our investors that he's a friend of mine from Zillow that when we were looking into everything, we were trying to come up with a bunch of different names and looking at things, and ultimately we stumbled upon the name Yentna, and it is a mountain range in Alaska. It's actually a glacier, and it's also a river up in Alaska. And so it also, aside from the fact that it was a catchy name, short, easy to pronounce and remember, it was also had to do with the outdoors.
Perfect. Colby, can you tell us a little about what Yentna does actually and what its services are and who they're based toward?
We are now very focused on building online booking and calendar management software for guides. And that can mean a number of things, but ultimately what we've really focused on was trying to find and figure out the things that were keeping hunting and fishing guides away from actually moving over to online booking and calendar management software. And we also have a marketplace where the listings actually go into our marketplace. They're searchable, much like going to a Zillow, where you would search for properties when guides create their listings, which ultimately they would create and have for their online booking checkout software. They also put their listings into our marketplace, so they become searchable in a public marketplace where we are growing traffic on a regular basis.
I know that seems like the market's pretty flooded with services like this. What separates you from the other brands?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say this: a lot of the other brands are and have been focused on more high volume tourist industry type stuff, like jet ski rentals, safe room, or those kind of like escape room type deals, where they aren't really focused on the outdoor specific side of things and the things that fishing and hunting guides really are looking for in order to be able to jump into this. One glaring thing that comes up and has come up that we solved for early on was fishing and hunting guides want to speak to their clients, especially the new clients, before they actually allow them to block their calendar. And most of those other software services don't provide that. It is simply, if you want to go on, you can get on their calendar, you start the booking process. Once it's booked by the customer online, it's booked. It's on your calendar and they've charged their credit card. Whereas we took the process of saying, we understand this is problematic for fishing and hunting guides due to the fact they want to have more conversation about their experience levels, or especially in fly fishing, right? They want to know if they're going to be getting into training them on how to, cast, and or if they're going to be able to just take them right out and start fishing. And so that was a huge piece for us. That's a big separator. I think the other thing that we did was we have a full back end dashboard where guides can run their full business through it. They don't necessarily have to have their own websites anymore. They can, and they can use our software on their websites. However, a lot of guides are taking the route of not wanting to pay for a website, because then you have to pay to market it. You have to pay for Google Ads. It becomes competitive. It becomes confusing and time consuming. And so what we've said is, look, you can literally build your listings inside of here. You have microsites that are built to convert with your full calendars inside of there. You can have it for each type of trip you offer. And you can write your fishing reports in here. They're all public. They go onto your site. Same with reviews management. We automate actual notifications to the customer and the guide. And so that, as an example, would be if you're a customer and you sign up with a guide online, or if the guide actually books you on the back end of our software, which by the way you can do as well. You're now the guide will now no longer have to reach out to you 24 to 48 hours beforehand. We actually send those notifications automatically to the customer by text and email, reminding them of, here's your guide's contact information, here's where you're supposed to meet, and as well as what to bring and what to remember, right? I mean, one of the big things that a lot of customers forget to do is go get their fishing license. So that's another thing that we remind them.
Very important for sure. So you guys are kind of like a Shopify, but for fishing guides, is that, and hunting guides, is that correct?
Yeah. I would. That's a good comparison. I think, the big thing that we did early on, and there's been countless learnings. Obviously, when you're starting a company, that is one thing that you have to be prepared for, is being able to shift rather rapidly. And the one thing that we realized was, we started out with a company called Stripe, and that allowed for direct deposit directly into the guide's bank account after a credit card transaction was taken. The problem was, guides didn't know who we were very early on, and they had to put their bank account information and the last four of their social, and they thought they were giving it to us, which, it goes directly to Stripe. It's like PayPal's biggest competitor. So we actually integrated PayPal in as well. So we give guides the option to have either PayPal or Stripe. Biggest differences are, PayPal makes you put your deposit the money into your PayPal account and then take it to your bank account if that's what you want to do. Stripe allows these guys to just get it directly deposited. So yeah, I would say from a checkout standpoint, in comparing it to Shopify, those are two definitely very important aspects to our customers.
Cool. Can you walk us through like what it's like as a guide signing up, like the exact process, with a bit of detail, not too much detail, but a bit of detail on that?
Yeah. The first thing they do is they would go onto if they were on the homepage and they found us that way, they would click on list your services, and ultimately they fill out a general contact form, or they can sign up with Facebook or their Twitter account or LinkedIn. And the next process is they create their first listing. We take them through a full sign up wizard. It's very easy to do. It is a full walkthrough with explanations. It's essentially creating a mini website in a matter of 15 minutes or less. That's including uploading photos and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. The question that I have, and I think a lot of listeners are thinking the same, and I speak with a lot of guides on the show, on our Guides Day Fridays, and there's good guides and there's bad guides. And on the show, we seek out guides personally on ourselves, and we go after them. We screen them. We have a testing. Now, do you have the same process, or can anyone list? Can I just go and say, hey, I'm a guide, and list on your site, and then not even know what I'm doing? And, the customer goes and pays, because I'm gonna ultimately blame your site as well for that negative experience. Is there anything you're doing to prevent that?
Yeah, great question. I would say this, for specifically for guides that are managed. managing their businesses inside of the river, or they're offshore guides, or they're inshore. They need to have the proper licensing. They need to have usually their captain's license, all that kind of stuff. We do ask them to upload their documentation. We manually review it, and they get so we give the guides an icon based on what paperwork they've uploaded. That includes their insurance paperwork, their captain's license. And that's one way we separate it. But I think the biggest way that we separate it is this. We have reviews on our site. Guides can actually go in and request reviews from their past clients. They can't just write their own reviews in from past clients from their past website, or say that these reviews were left to me by customers in the past. They can't manually write it in. They have to request it. They can send it to a past client through an email. And then any bookings that they do through the online booking software or our website going forward, we automatically at the end of the trip send a notification to the customer asking them to leave that guide a review. And so I bring that up because reviews are not only important for customers to be able to see and review and say, yes, this person's either good or bad, but it's also important for the way we actually our algorithm works on our search. So the guides that have the highest level of reviews and the most reviews are automatically going to get sorted to the top. For us, the marketplace is all about providing the best consumer experience to that customer. And that starts with putting the best guides in front of them right off the bat. And it takes other things into account, like availability and dates and all that kind of stuff, since we obviously have their calendars up to date because they're using our software on the back end. But the primary default factor in the way the algorithm works from a search perspective is pushing up the guys that have the most 5-star reviews.
Colby, it seems like your business has two types of demographics, and you've learned to identify those demographics, one being the guides themselves and the other being the user of the guides. Can you explain to me a bit more about which type of, how you guys are marketing towards each type of demographic separately?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge when you have and are serving two different customers, right? And at the end of the day, you're right. We have a B2B clientele, which are the guides, and we have a B2C, which is the consumers that would like to book these guides. One of the things that we realized very early on, and the reason why we moved to providing a full online booking software that they could use on their own websites versus just signing up for our marketplace, was in order to get guides to actually sign up with us. They loved what we were doing. We're not trying to price them out or price gouge them. So they were really excited about it. The one thing that all of a sudden came up in the middle of us reaching out to guides after we had done our beta launch was, yeah, this is awesome. I love it. However, I already have to manage one calendar. I don't want to have to come back every single day and manage this calendar as well and update it so that I'm not getting double booked. And so that to us was a glaring problem for being able to get the guides to get into our marketplace, right? And ultimately, without guides coming into the marketplace doesn't exist, and that's the content, and that's for the consumers to actually come there. That needed to be in place, and so we took a pretty drastic move and stopped reaching out to guides altogether, and went back and said, we need to build a full-on software as a solution for these guides. We can't just say, please sign up, and we hope you never double book yourself. And we hope that you're going to come back and manage our calendar along with yours every single day. Essentially, we're creating double the work, right? For guides who are already getting home late at night after washing their boats down, or picking the gear up and dropping their clients off, all the different things that they have to go through, not including what they do in the morning to prep. It was just an unrealistic expectation to expect them to do that. And so for us, that was a huge step. We went back and said, we need to completely build this whole product out in order for them to be able to manage everything through it. And so that includes offline bookings as well. So example, you have, booking, book now button on your website, or you use our microsites. It doesn't really matter. So the consumer can find you online, which is super important. We know that. The other part, though, is we have all these established guides who get a lot of their own business, and they get phone calls still. And so they usually write those down in a day planner, and then they come back and they show up for the trip, and they either swipe a credit card. Hopefully that machine works, and hopefully by that time that customer gets there, their credit card isn't maxed out or expired or something along those lines, or they have cash and a check, right? And so there was this old school way of doing it, and then we basically now give them the option to say, hey, if you get a phone call, just quickly go to your calendar. You click on the date that the customer wants to go. It automatically pulls up a booking, essentially a booking page that you would fill out on the back end. You put in, you select the trip that they want to take. You select the amount of people that are coming with them, and all the pricing is already pre-built out because you have it already stored for what shows up on the public-facing side. And so you don't have to add in pricing or anything. You just put in the customer's name, email address, and their phone number, and you hit save. And when you hit save, we automatically text the customer a booking link, whether that either goes through Stripe or PayPal, whichever one the guy chose to go with. And the customer then clicks on that and checks out. Okay. And so it's that simple. And the calendar, by the way, is intuitive, which means it's one color while it's pending payment. And then as soon as the customer pays, it turns green. So now the guides automatically know who's paid and who hasn't. And if somebody lost the booking link or forgot to pay, they can just hit reset. So it did a couple of things for guides. And this was the first step for us to be able to really build the marketplace. But it did a couple of things. Number one, it streamlined that process big time. No longer do they have to screw around with a credit card reader or hope that they have service or that the customer's credit card is going to go through. They know beforehand, right? And if it's a cash booking, they can put them in as a cash booking. It still takes them through all of our automated notifications and it blocks it out. By the way, we have two-way calendar integration on the site. So when they actually sign up, they just connect it to whichever calendar system that they use. And it's if they put like a kid's soccer game or a vacation on their personal calendar on their phone or iPad, wherever, it's going to block those times out on our calendar so they can't be blocked or booked publicly. And then vice versa, anything that they book on our calendar automatically sends to their phone or their iPad so that they always have the customer's information in there as well. And so we just took a number of steps in order to say, we've got to get the B2B side taken care of, interested in our product, and wanting to be on our site before we can really target consumers, right? And so what we've started to do now is we're targeting specific areas for guides, and obviously anybody can sign up at any time. But when we get a certain number of guides in an area, we then start advertising the marketplace to drive consumers into it. And ultimately, that's done through a number of things with SEO and blog articles and Facebook ads and Google, all that stuff. So
you're actually doing that for the guides on their behalf, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
We send them into the marketplace. So like example, if it was a Tampa ad, it would take it back to a list of the guides in Tampa, right? And it would all be sorted again, like I talked about with that algorithm where the guides with the most reviews are going to show up at the top. It'll go by availability.
I think that's great. That's just such value added service right there. It's about them, not about you. And I kind of like that. So definitely we're at, the only thing that scares me, and I'm sure other listeners as well, is, you have all this awesome software, but we all know software, there's glitches and software fails. What do you have preventing that? And, God forbid what would happen if the bookings or something happened on the backside of that. What do you guys have in place for such an event if it were to occur?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we use essentially the competitor to AWS, which is DigitalOcean, and we have two servers. Everything's backed up, and so ultimately, at the end of the day, the credit card information doesn't get stored on our servers. It's stored in either Stripe or PayPal, right? So that's number one. We don't manage any of that. As far as the site, if one server goes down, we have a backup server that takes its place. The customers will literally not see us or skip a beat. That being said, the site could go down on a day, and ultimately that's what that backup serves for. And there could be a momentary lapse in time, or if we're pushing software updates, that would happen really late at night. At a time where most guides aren't going to be in the dashboard or using the system, they would be notified ahead of time when we're pushing software so that they know, hey, you could experience a momentum or a potential glitch, if you will, between X time and this time at night, because we're going to be pushing a software update. So if you need to do anything inside of it, please do it now. That way, if you're up between the hours of 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. trying to book customers, you could potentially experience issues. But again, it's very rare, and we do push software quite often, but it's usually a 15 to 30 minute window.
Yeah, that's no different than any other software business, really, right?
The biggest companies in the country, they do the same thing.
Exactly, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, that's to be expected. I think it's just the norm now anyway. So,
Hmm.
you know, why like here's where I'm kind of confused at. So your business is new and you guys how many clients do you currently have?
Yeah, so we have about 80 guides in the software right now, but we have about 150 trips. And so the one thing that I would point out is we didn't so we when we took that step back, it takes time obviously to go and build a software like we built. And we are
Mhm.
not we one thing I'll point out, we did not go and raise VC funding. I have been funding this entire thing personally. So this is not we haven't raised $10 million, and that's part of the reason that we can keep the prices low, right? And keep
Yeah.
the prices that are they're not in a place where we're having to appease investors as to our revenue growth. And we want to get it right before we actually scale it. And so we're at a place though where we're ready to scale it. And we've gotten customers in, they're using the product. We want to make sure that it's all functioning properly. We're taking feedback. And the one thing about a software product or even just anything, any business online, period, you have to constantly be taking feedback from your customers. And for us, the one thing that we've done really, really well, in my opinion, is move really fast when we're
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
the multiple feedback points that are coming into similar places. So,
Couldn't agree more. So basically where I'm kind of going with this as well is you want to scale it. And like to what level do you want to scale it at? Can you walk me through that? Where do you see yourself in a year? Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
yeah, in 1 year, I see us at probably around 5,000 guides signed up in the software. And in hopefully in 5 years, we have high numbers, but we want to be around 50,000 guides, and if not more. And so for us, there's lofty goals, and goals are going to change as we start to realize the velocity of signups and work through obviously certain things that may slow it down, or hopefully it goes a lot faster than we expected. But at the end of the day, it's not just about getting the guides in the software. That is a super important piece, but it's about providing the best software to those guides to make sure that they're making money and eventually they're telling people about what we're doing, right? And that ultimately at the end of the day is going to create a much better marketplace experience, because the one thing that consumers demand today is choice, and they want choice, and they want to be able to search it in one single place. That is the biggest problem that faces this industry today, is it's still very fragmented. And that's not to say there's not competitors that have marketplaces. I think the challenge is that the adoption of them has been minimal due to the fact of some of the pricing on some of those competitors. And so for us, one thing that we really want to do is it's about getting volume of guides into here, and obviously finding the good ones and weeding out the bad ones. It's just part of the process. You can't, obviously there's no crystal ball.
Mhm.
But and then also, at the end of the day, letting the consumers help us with that, and letting us know who's great, and then propping them up and finding new and creative ways to push them more business, right, and reward them for that. And so for us, while it is about scaling the number of guides, it's also about making the product great, right, and making sure the consumer is having a great experience in our marketplace as we grow it.
Yeah, absolutely. If the product's good, it is simple and easy for both parties, the guide and the user. You're definitely it's going to be successful for sure. So, do you see is currently are you guys global or a national brand?
We're focused on domestic at the moment, but we do take guides from other countries. I mean, we have guides in Mexico, we have guides in Costa Rica, we have guides in Africa, we have one in New Zealand, and we have one in Scotland. So it's kind of crazy how it happens, and we've done very limited marketing to bring guides in. It's just simply because we were still refining product. And so that wasn't the primary focal point. But it's kind of just organically gotten to where it's at, which is pretty amazing. And so now that we're getting ready to scale this up, I think it'll be really interesting to see how it grows, or domestically versus even just internationally.
No, I agree. As you guys expand more and whatnot, it's going to be big. I definitely foresee that. So, I think the elephant in the room that everyone's sort of wondering is how does Yenta make its money?
Yeah, great question. So we have a couple of options. So we have a free program. In that program, essentially allows the guys to create their listings. Right now, and again, this comes with experimenting with pricing models as a new business, but we had it. So we also have a subscription model, and that subscription model is $59.99 a month, or you get a just about 20% discount if you pay for 1 year in advance. And I think I want to say off the top of my head that's like $574 and some change. Um, but the way we make our money with the free product is the customers would then pay a service fee, much like they would do on Airbnb or anywhere else. And essentially, what we've, the one elephant in the room that most people are probably going to think now is, why would the customer want to pay that? And I think the reality of it is, these guides work their butts off and the margins are thin. They do it because they love it and they provide incredible experiences for these folks. And what we don't want to do is diminish their desire to do that, right? And at the end of the day, we haven't had any challenges. The customers are pretty conditioned to paying service fees now for things that they want to do, right? And ultimately, the thing that I think gives them in my opinion, the thought process that they're okay with it is the fact that we're providing a really incredible experience on the site. It is super easy to search, see reviews, read about these guides' trips, and ultimately booking and checking out takes less than 30 seconds. I mean, it's super easy to do. And not to mention, they can see the guide's calendar all in one single place, and they were given that choice up front, right? And it comes back to something I was going to talk about, but we're in this on-demand economy. And if you're not providing an incredible consumer experience from start to finish, it is essentially they're just never going to come back.
Yeah, you're done. You're done, right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but it'll be a week, right? And you're just done.
Right.
So no, I agree. So you know what? So between having a family, running two businesses, and fishing when you can, what else is next for you?
Honestly, this is it for me. This is truly my baby. My wife would tell you that I am addicted to seeing this be successful. And I think the reason why is, in the beginning, it was like any business, it started off as an idea because of a pain point that I personally experienced when trying to find a guide to go up to Alaska. And at the end of the day, what's happened since is I've gotten to know so many of these guides, right? I talked to them, I've met them in person, I've traveled around and spoke to quite a few of them, and just to get feedback on the product and walk them through what we're doing and get them to tell me what's done right and what's great. And what I've really learned is they're so passionate about what they're doing, and they're not making millions doing this, right? And that's the thing. Like they're sacrificing certain things to do what they love, and then also pass it on to these families that are taking kids, or obviously some fishermen that are more diehard in certain areas of the country that are looking for those experiences. And ultimately, it's really ignited a passion in me that I didn't know existed. Truthfully, I grew up in organized real estate. Both my parents were real estate brokers, and I kind of fell into it. I got my license when I was 19. I love it, and it's a great business. However, it is truly it's not my passion. This is, and I want to see us successful so that I know these guys are getting something that's going to help them be more successful, and also give them more time back, right? And that's part of what we're trying to do here with the software, is really give them more time back, along with helping them make more money, because that's also important. But I think the one thing that I've taken away from all these guys as I've talked to them and traveled around, they don't have time, and they especially like the guys with boats and that are doing these offshore trips, they're getting up at 4 a.m, getting to the dock at 5 to get the boat prepped, and then they're going out and getting the bait before the customer shows up, and then they pick up the customer. Maybe it's a half day trip, and then they take somebody else back out. By the time they're back to the dock, it's 6 o'clock at night. Now they have to clean the boat, clean the fish for the customers, all these things, right? And then they get home, it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot left.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we want to help them get some of that back by removing some of the manual processes they were doing in their business before, by automating it. And that's a lot of what we've focused on, and that's what our product does a lot of.
No, I agree. Colby, you keep talking about passion and how passionate you are about this business, and I've been talking to you for the past 45 minutes here, and I can definitely tell that about your passion. Where do you get your passion and inspiration from to continue as CEO and to keep driving this business forward?
Yeah, great question, Greg. I have two beautiful children. They're 5.5 and 3.5, and truthfully, I want this to be successful. So um, they have something to be proud about, and and at the end of the day, it's also I love what I'm doing, and building a business is it can be the most rewarding thing, and it can also be the least rewarding thing if you're not passionate about what you're doing when you started it. And I think I built another business prior, and it worked out well, but it wasn't on the same level of passion for me.
Hmm.
And I think the thing that brings me into this on a regular basis is I love fishing and I love hunting. If it was up to me, I would probably either be in a boat 24/7 or be in a duck blind or be out in the woods, right? And these are all things that I would love to do, but I think if we get this right, I think there's a void in our country where we're losing the children, truthfully, that where they used to grow up inside of this space where their families, their dads would take them hunting or their uncles, and I feel like we've gotten away from a lot of that tradition, and it's not being passed down like it used to be. And I feel like these guys are helping with that, right? I feel like they're helping pass down some of these traditions that maybe the mom or the dad doesn't really have the confidence in to take their kids out. And then I feel like if we can get this right, we're going to get a lot more people back into the sport and help them see the value in what we're doing.
No, I see where you're going with that for sure. It's definitely something that does need a lot more attention put to it and more detail as well, or sorry, commitment as well, going
Yeah.
forward for sure. You know what, Colby? I always ask my guests one thing, and that's what is the one thing that you would change within the fly fishing industry?
Um, I think I think
I think I kind of can answer this for you,
yeah.
but
Ultimately, I think it's just my I guess my more advice would be to guides to take a more educational approach with people that are beginners or intermediate at the best, because what we need to be doing is passing down something that they can then pass back down to whoever's next, whether it's their own children or a friend or a niece or a nephew. It doesn't really matter. I think if we can, and I'm not saying guys aren't. I mean, most of the guys that I know are very focused on the education part of it. They actually love that part. But there's also some that would just prefer to take out the people that are experienced, right? And I think the one thing
Mhm.
I would change is that. And I think the other thing that I would change is providing and focusing on the customer's experience before they ever come out to go on the trip. And that starts with how do they book you and how do they pay? Because some of the most frustrating times I've ever had going on fishing and hunting trips started with the actual booking process itself. And I mean, that sounds somewhat self-serving and biased, but the truth of the matter is, there's a market for this for a reason. And I equate it, going to get your haircut now, right? You can go to Great Clips or any of those apps and quickly click the button and reserve your spot, show up, and get your haircut, right? And that it's simple. You don't have to deal with the lines or the wait as long as you're using that process. And it's the same thing here for
Mhm.
booking, and everything's online now. And I think the one thing that is frustrating customers the most is when they get to your website, they want to be able to do the one thing that they want to do when they get there, which is see your availability and then click a button and book it, right? And pay. And if that's not being provided, then it's a potential lost customer. And if you have a website and you're not providing that, then there's I get it, it's a placeholder and your contact information's on there. But one stat that I always come back to with the guys we talk to is in 2016, and this is an old stat, it's probably more now, but 42% of the tourist bookings were done online. So that means if you have a website and you had 100 people come to it, 42 people of those, 42% of that did not have the opportunity to book with you the way they wanted to, right? And that means that you probably lost out on close to 50% of your opportunities. And that's a lot.
Mhm. Oh yeah, that's huge, right?
It's
That
massive.
definitely when it comes to your bottom line, and this is how you're putting food on your table for sure. I mean, you're absolutely right. I know from our end, like we speak with a lot of people, and I was speaking with a major fly fishing company later on this week or a couple days ago, sorry, and they were saying the same thing, like that. they're cutting back on their sales reps of going door to door, and it's more of getting onto the online, and people are buying online and doing their research and comparing online and reading reviews and looking at all that sort of stuff online, then going to the shop knowing already what they know and buying the product, right? So it's funny how it is. And he was also saying when you're online, like you're a 24-hour a day business now, right?
Yeah.
Like you can book it like you said, midnight on the toilet if you wanted, right? And it's that
Yep.
option's there. So you don't need to talk to anyone. If all the details are correct and everything's there for sure. So definitely the way of the future. And I love how that technology is transpiring and coming over and coming into the fly fishing industry as a whole for sure. So perfect. Love it. Before I let you go, Colby, do you have anything for our listeners today?
Yeah. If you're a guide and you're curious about joining us, we've got a discount a discount code for you all that is obviously provided and part of what we're doing with you guys with Fly Fishing Insider. But you're going to get a 30-day free trial, and that code will be FFIP30. So if you want to come try it out, all you do is go to yentna.com and yentna.com/subscribe, and that would take you to the page to actually sign up for that.
Awesome. And where else can we find you, Colby?
Yeah, you can find our Instagram is Yentna Outdoors, so at Yentna Outdoors. Twitter is the same handle. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and you can find us on our website at www.yentna.com. We have a full chat bot system there where you can actually chat with us, and during normal business hours, it is fully manned and staffed. And then after hours, it would send us a note that you want to connect. I think that is a great way for us to connect. If you have questions about what we're doing or trying to find trips, 100%, that's a great way to get started and talk to us.
Sounds good. Colby, I just wanted to thank you. I'll make sure that I put all the details in the show notes. And again, I just wanted to thank you for being our guest today on the show. And I wanted to thank you, the listeners, for being our guest on the show.
Yeah, Greg, I really appreciate it. And really happy to have spent some time with you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, Colby, I'm going to let you go.
All right. Thanks, Greg.